Hi, friends. Welcome back to Indistinct Chatter. I'm Eliza, and today I hope you have your tinfoil hats ready because we are going to get into something that has been on my mind quite a bit lately, and honestly, something that I easily spiral about. And listen, this is not a doomsday episode, okay? But my spiraling led me down some pretty interesting paths, and sometimes paths like these just kind of wake you up. Like, they get you to snap out of autopilot, if you know what I mean. And maybe this episode will convince you to look at who you shop from and or maybe get you into gardening if you aren't already into that. I don't know. We'll see. Let's get into it, shall we? So this all started with a video. I'm going to read you the whole thing because I want you to hear it the way I heard it. And honestly, I don't know how to put the video in, so you have to hear me read it. Sorry. It's a man. He's older. He's talking straight to the camera. There's no name, no credentials, no date. It looks like he's on a stage talking or like in a lecture hall or something, but it's zoomed in on him so you really can't see anything. And he says this. He says, "We are slowly getting rid of all seeds in fruits and vegetables. And honestly, it's brilliant because once every apple, grape, watermelon, and tomato is seedless, guess who controls life itself? No more planting your own food. No more saving seeds for next season. Everything you eat, everything that grows will come from our labs. And when the last natural seed is gone, that's when it gets fun. We can make them rare, expensive, maybe even licensed. Only billionaires will have gardens and everyone else will have to subscribe to eat." Sounds insane, right? But it's already happening. Seedless isn't convenience, it's containment. Every time you pick up a seedless fruit, you're holding a future that can't reproduce. So yeah, expect more seedless everything because the easiest way to control the world is to stop it from growing. So remember to stay safe out there. That sounds a little scary, right? And this video led me to the seedless theory. Now, if you simply Google it, AI will kind of auto-generate a different response based on your own algorithm that you've curated, whether on purpose or not. And I Googled it twice. I Googled it from my regular account, and then I Googled it using my Indistinct Chatter account. The first AI overview, the one on my regular account, said that the seedless food theory is a holistic and alternative health concept, which claims that seedless fruits and vegetables are artificial, sterile, and lack the quote, life force, minerals, or energetic vitality of natural seeded foods. So, Googling it from my regular account, it doesn't really sound so much like a conspiracy theory, right? Holistic alternative health concept. I'm a little woo-woo, so makes sense. And this is why you cannot rely on a simple Google search or AI. You got to dig around yourself. Anyway, this first response goes on to basically say that people who follow or believe this alternative health concept often argue that these foods are pushed by corporations to prevent people from saving seeds. And then the second time I searched it using my Indistinct Chatter account, AI generated this response. The seedless food theory is a viral social media narrative claiming that seedless fruits are part of a corporate or government plot to eliminate natural reproduction in plants, force reliance on commercial labs, and reduce human nutrition. Which, I mean, it makes sense that would come up because think of all the things that I Google while on my Indistinct Chatter account. A lot of distrust in the government, right? So what is it? Like, is it a holistic and alternative health concept or is it an online conspiracy? Who's to say? Either way, both claim that either corporations or the government are basically monopolizing agriculture. I just thought that was interesting. Now, before I get into the facts, back to the video, I do want to say though that this video makes a great point about convenience. It's something that Cole and I have been talking about lately. Convenience is containment. I love that quote. Of course, convenience for some is a true convenience because it's a tool. But as a consumer-heavy capitalist society, convenience isn't being treated as a tool anymore. I don't know. Maybe I can get into that in a future episode. Just something to hold on to before you choose delivery or buy the newest gadget to take care of a problem you don't have. Anyway, I could not verify a single thing about this video. Not who he is, not when it was made, and not whether he's even a real person or AI generated. And I tried. I'm not going to sit here and tell you it's fake because I don't know that, but I'm also not going to tell you it's real because obviously I don't know that either. But the not knowing is kind of the whole point. This video is built to be unverifiable. So no name means no accountability. Quote, our labs, but no company attached means you can fill in basically whoever you're already afraid of. It's essentially just a mirror with a voiceover that sounds like they know what they're talking about. And so if you can't even be certain it's real or fake, what's the big deal, right? Well, here's why I couldn't let it go and why it has led me on quite the spiral. So I actually went looking to prove it wrong, if I'm being honest, maybe to stop myself from spiraling. I don't know. And what I found instead was a paper trail that's stranger and better documented than anything this guy or robot, whatever, could have said. Now, I'm talking about real patents, real Supreme Court cases, real letters from real state agencies to real public libraries. This is stuff with case numbers, people. Anyway, let's start in the 1920s. So Prohibition started in 1920. The 18th Amendment and the Volstead Act made it illegal to make, sell, or transport drinking alcohol. And what happened is exactly what you'd expect, which is that people kept on drinking. Now, industrial alcohol was still legal because, you needed it for manufacturing. Solvents, fuel, antifreeze, that kind of thing. And to keep people from just drinking the industrial stuff to dodge liquor taxes, the government had required, since a 1906 law, that industrial alcohol be denatured, which means adding chemicals to make it taste and smell disgusting. Bootleggers figured out you could hire a chemist to redistill it and strip the additives back out. Roughly 60 million gallons a year of industrial alcohol was being diverted this way. So in 1926, the federal government was getting pissed and made a decision. They ordered the denaturing formulas to be made stronger. Want to know what our own government decided to add to something they knew people were choosing to drink? Well, by the middle of 1927, the formulas included kerosene, brucine, which is a plant alkaloid closely related to strychnine, which is often used to kill rats. There was also gasoline, benzene, cadmium, iodine, zinc, mercury salts, nicotine, ether, formaldehyde. Is it ether or ether? Anyway, there was also chloroform, camphor, carbolic acid, quinine, and acetone, plus methyl alcohol, wood alcohol, which binds and kills you. They knew bootleggers were stealing it. They knew bootleggers couldn't get all of it back out, and they did it anyway. Wayne Wheeler, who ran the Anti-Saloon League and had enormous influence over enforcement, told the New York Times, and I quote, "The person who drinks this industrial alcohol is a deliberate suicide." Charles Norris, not sure if he's related to Chuck, was the chief medical examiner of New York City, and he was watching people come into his morgue, and he said the government must be charged with the moral responsibility for the deaths that poisoned liquor causes, although it cannot be held legally responsible. By New Year's Eve of 1926, the Times was reporting the holiday death toll from poisoned liquor at 47 people. That's in New York alone, just over one holiday weekend. And Seymour Loman, who was the Assistant Secretary of the Treasury in charge of Prohibition, said publicly that the people on the fringes of society who drink were dying off fast from poison hooch, and that if the result was a sober America, a good job will have been done. Estimates are that by the time Prohibition ended in 1933, around 10,000 people died from this. Now, I want to be fair here because this one circulates online in a version that's slightly wrong. Snopes, the largest and oldest online fact-checking and debunking website, had looked at it. Technically, the government did not poison alcohol that was meant for drinking, and there's no evidence they were sitting around going, "Let's kill some drunks." The goal was deterrence. The additives predated Prohibition. The policy was public and it was argued about in newspapers at the time, all that stuff. But honestly, that's almost worse, right? Because secret government plot is, at the end of the day, just a plot. This was policy. It was in the paper. 10,000 people died, and the response from the guy in charge was that it would be, quote, worth it. Not a great look, if you ask me. Now, let's go back to 1965. We're taking our lumpy brains to Harvard. What? Like it's hard? There's a fight happening in nutrition science. Americans, especially men, are dying of coronary heart disease at alarming rates, and researchers are split on the dietary culprit. One camp says sugar, one camp says fat and cholesterol. The Sugar Research Foundation, which is a sugar industry trade group and which today is called the Sugar Association, aka Big Sugar, has a problem on their hands because in July of 1965, articles linking sucrose, regular table sugar, to coronary heart disease start showing up in the Annals of Internal Medicine, which, can I just say, I feel like I'm just saying anals with an accent. Annals, annals. I feel like we should pick a different name. Or maybe I'm just 10. An SRS executive named John Hickson had already written an internal memo in 1964 proposing that the group embark on a major program to counteract negative attitudes towards sugar, partly by funding its own research to, quote, refute our detractors. So Hickson goes to Harvard. He recruits Frederick Stare, who chairs the nutrition department at Harvard's public health school, onto the foundation's scientific advisory board. Then he approaches Mark Hegsted, a nutrition professor there, and cuts a deal. Hegsted and a colleague, Robert McGandy, get $6,500 to write a review article about the papers claiming there's some special metabolic peril in sucrose. $6,500 in 1965 is about $48,000 in today's money, by the way. Hegsted asked Hickson to provide the articles for the review, and wouldn't you know, the sugar industry picked which studies got reviewed. The reviews came out in 1967 in the New England Journal of Medicine, which is not a small journal. It's one of the most prestigious medical journals in the world, and the reviews tore apart the studies implicating sugar and concluded that there was exactly one dietary change that could prevent coronary heart disease, and that change was cutting fat and cholesterol. Nobody disclosed the funding, by the way. The New England Journal of Medicine didn't require researchers to disclose conflicts of interest until 1984. So keep that in mind when reading old-ass studies. Mark Hegsted went on to become the head of nutrition at the United States Department of Agriculture, where in 1977, he helped draft the document that became the forerunner to the federal government's dietary guidelines. And that's why you grew up eating Snackwells. Maybe. Do you remember those cookies? I think they still sell them. Maybe not. Probably not. I don't know. I don't know the last time I saw them. Snackwells. You out there? That's also why the entire grocery store went low fat, and every low fat product replaced the fat with sugar, which makes you wonder about the protein craze. What's going on there? Maybe nothing. I don't know. Time will tell. Anyway, all of this sat in boxes in a Harvard library basement until a woman named Kristen Kearns found it. She's a dentist who became a researcher at UC San Francisco, and she'd been digging through sugar industry archives. She and her co-authors, Laura Schmidt and Stanton Glantz, published it in JAMA Internal Medicine in September of 2016. 2,000 pages of documents. Glantz said that they were able to derail the discussion about sugar that's basically been going on for decades. Marion Nessel, who's a nutrition professor at NYU, wrote the accompanying commentary, and she put it about as plainly as it can be put. Like, she basically gave a duh, hello. She said, funding research is ethical. Bribing researchers to produce the evidence you want is not. The Sugar Association responded to the paper, and they acknowledged that the Sugar Research Foundation should have exercised greater transparency in its research activities. They also said they questioned the author's attempts to reframe historical occurrences to align with the trending anti-sugar narrative. All three of the Harvard scientists were dead by the time this came out, and so were the sugar executives. 50 years. That's how long it took. Crazy. Okay, now this next one is the bridge to everything else that we're going to talk about today. So hang tight. I actually briefly discussed this in a previous episode, but here we are again. 1998, a cattle farmer in West Virginia named Wilbur Tennant has a problem. His cows are dying, and not just a few, hundreds. They've got weird tumors, their teeth are turning black, they're behaving strangely before they die. His land actually sits next to a landfill that DuPont bought from his family, downstream from DuPont's Washington Works plant in Parkersburg. He can't get anyone to listen, not the state, not the vets, not the EPA. He gets a lawyer named Robert Bilett. And Bilett is kind of a weird pick for this because Bilett was a corporate defense attorney. He worked for chemical companies. He worked with DuPont. He took the case as a favor, partly because his grandma had lived in Parkersburg and he'd spent summers there as a kid. So he's got kind of a soft spot for the place. In 1999, he files a federal lawsuit. And while he's digging through the documents, he finds a letter from DuPont to the EPA that mentions an acronym he's never seen, PFOA. He asks DuPont for more documentation on it, but they refuse. Interesting. Then in 2000, a court order forces DuPont to hand over everything related to this chemical. And what arrives is decades of internal studies and correspondence, tens of thousands of documents. And here's what's in said documents. Ooh, are you ready to get pissed? In 1961, DuPont's own chief of toxicology for Teflon found that the materials had the ability to increase the size of rats' livers at low doses and advised that the chemicals be handled with extreme care and that contact with skin should be strictly avoided. That's 1961. It's 2000 at this point. So pushing 4 decades of holding on to this information. A 1970 internal memo from DuPont-funded Haskell Laboratory found C8, which is the same thing as PFOA, to be highly toxic when inhaled and moderately toxic when ingested. A 1979 private report for DuPont found that dogs given a single dose of PFOA died 2 days later. In 1984, DuPont's own testing found C8 in Parkersburg's drinking water, and surprise, surprise, they didn't tell the residents. They didn't tell the water utilities either. They just discussed it internally and kept operating all hunky-dory, nothing to see here. From 1951 to 2003, that plant put over 1.7 million pounds of C8 into the Ohio River, into unlined ponds, and into landfills. By the 1990s, according to reporting in the New York Times, the company knew PFOA caused multiple types of cancerous tumors. The Tennant case became a class action on behalf of about 70,000 people whose drinking water was contaminated. It took Bilett 20 years, and it ended in a $670 million settlement. Now, I have recommended this movie before. If you haven't seen it, I highly, highly, highly recommend it. Even if you've seen it, watch it again. It's a great movie, but it's going to piss you off. It's called Dark Waters. It came out in 2019. Mark Ruffalo plays Bilett. Okay, so all that happened, 20-something years ago? Why does it matter today? PFAS or PFAS, that whole class of chemicals, is now in essentially everyone. Nationwide biomonitoring shows nearly all Americans carry trace amounts. They're called forever chemicals because they don't break down, not in the environment, not in you. We've all got it in us. So when somebody in 1985 in Parkersburg said, hey, I think the company is poisoning our water and they know about it, he probably sounded like a crazy, cranky old man. But as we've learned, he was right. And it took a court order and 20 years and a lawyer who used to work for the other side just to prove it. But in the end, he was right. Now, hold on to that because we're going to come back to it. Now let's move on and talk about seeds, because this is where my spiraling started to get a little bit more loopy. So in March of 1998, the United States Patent Office granted patent number 5,723,765. It's titled Control of Plant Gene Expression. So write that number down if you want to look it up for yourself. 5,723,765. What it covers, among other things, is a method of engineering a crop so that the seeds it produces are sterile. The plant grows, it fruits, it makes seeds, and those seeds will not grow anything. There's a gene that switches on latent seed development and produces a cytotoxic protein that kills the embryo. The stated purpose was to stop farmers from saving and replanting seed. Critics actually named it Terminator technology. The industry name for it was Genetic Use Restriction Technology, or GURT, G-U-R-T. And if you were the company, you referred to it as Technology Protection System. Sure, Jan. The patent was granted to Delta and Pine Land Company, which was a cotton seed company, and according to Delta and Pine Land's own SEC filing, their 10K, the patent was owned jointly by Delta and Pine Land and, quote, the United States of America as represented by the Secretary of Agriculture. That's right. The USDA co-owned a patent on seeds that can't reproduce. And they weren't shy about it. A USDA spokesman named Willard Phelps told New Scientist in March of 1998 that their system was a way of self-policing the unauthorized use of American technology. So if you'd said in 1997, hey, I think the government is working on seeds that won't grow, so farmers have to buy new ones every year, you would have sounded like a crazy person, unhinged at best. And honestly, today you'd sound crazy if you didn't know about this patent. It never got commercialized. There was enormous international backlash. Delegates to the UN Convention on Biological Diversity agreed to a moratorium on field testing and commercialization of Terminator and similar technologies. A lot of countries wanted a flat ban. Some of them explicitly said they were worried it could be used as a trade weapon to force compliance with U.S. patent law. Monsanto bought Delta and Pineland in 2007 for $1.5 billion, and they publicly committed not to commercialize sterile seed technology. The original patent actually expired in 2015, so the technology exists still, and the U.S. government even partially owned it at one point. And the reason it isn't in your grocery store is simply because of an international agreement, so not because of a change of heart. I don't know, I found that a little interesting. Now, let's say the sterile seed thing never happened. Great. Can you just save seeds? Well, let's meet Vernon Hugh Bowman, soybean farmer, Indiana. Every year, Bowman bought Roundup Ready soybean seed for his main crop. Roundup Ready is Monsanto's patented soybean, genetically modified to survive glyphosate. So you can spray your whole field and only the weeds die. When you buy that seed, you sign a technology agreement, and what it says is that you can plant the seed for one commercial crop in one season. You can sell what you grow, you can eat what you grow, but you cannot save any of it and plant it again next year. Bowman followed that for his main crop, but he also did a riskier late season second planting, and he didn't want to pay full price for it. So he went to the local grain elevator and bought commodity soybeans, the kind meant to be crushed into feed or soil, which are just, they're just nice and cheap. Here's the thing about a grain elevator in Indiana. Most of what's in it came from fields planted with Roundup Ready seed. So Bowman planted the cheap beans, sprayed glyphosate over the whole field, and everything that survived was, by definition, Roundup Ready. Then he harvested those and saved them for the next year. He did this for 8 planting cycles before Monsanto found out. Then they sued him for patent infringement. Bowman's defense was patent exhaustion. That's the idea that once you buy a patented thing, you own that thing and you can use it or resell it. If you buy, say, a patented toaster, the company doesn't get to tell you what to do with your toaster. They don't tell you, hey, you can buy this, but when you want to get a new one, you can't resell this. Well, the district court rejected it. The federal circuit rejected it. And on May 13th, 2013, the Supreme Court of the United States rejected it unanimously, 9-0. And their reasoning? Patent exhaustion gives you the right to use or resell the thing you bought. It does not give you the right to make new copies of it. And when you plant a seed and grow a new plant, you've made a copy, which, that's what a seed is, right? It's the entire function of a seed. And one footnote that I'm including because it's true and I think it's a little interesting and I think you should know. I don't know. Justice Clarence Thomas worked as an attorney for Monsanto earlier in his career in the 1970s, and he did not recuse himself from the case. Now, I'm not alleging anything improper. Supreme Court justices decide their own recusals, and there's no outside body that reviews it. I'm just telling you this because it's a fact that people bring up, and I think context is worth knowing, right? So if you can't save patented seeds, who owns the patents? Well, let me introduce you to four little cuties: Bayer, BASF, Corteva, and Syngenta. Those four companies control 56% of the global commercial seed market and 61% of the global pesticide market. Bayer by itself holds 23% of seeds. Just for a little contrast, in the 1980s, the 10 biggest seed companies in the world combined controlled less than 15% of the market. There were hundreds of small and mid-sized seed companies, and now today, the top 10 control about 70%. And that happened through a specific set of mergers. Bayer bought Monsanto in a $63 billion deal. Dow and DuPont merged in a $130 billion deal and spun out their agriculture arm as Corteva. ChemChina bought Syngenta for $43 billion. And I want you to know something about that list. Bayer, BASF, Corteva, and Syngenta. Do you know what they all have in common? 3 out of 4 of those names started as chemical companies. Bayer began as a dye manufacturer. BASF stands for, and you guys, this is German, Badische Anilin und Soda Fabrik. How did I do? It translates to Baden Aniline and Soda Factory, and it is the largest chemical producer on the planet. Syngenta was assembled in 2000 out of the agricultural divisions of Novartis and AstraZeneca. And then the fourth one, Corteva, well. Corteva is the piece that Dow and DuPont spun off in 2019 when they broke themselves up. In January of 2021, Chemours, DuPont, and Corteva announced a binding agreement to share the costs of legacy PFAS liabilities arising from conduct before July 2015. Corteva and DuPont on one side, Chemours on the other, splitting qualified expenses 50-50, up to $4 billion over 20 years. In the same announcement, they resolved the remaining Ohio PFOA multi-district litigation for $83 million, and Corteva's share of that was $27 million. Then in June of 2023, those 3 companies agreed to pay $1.185 billion to settle PFA's drinking water claims from a class of public water systems serving most of the population of this country. The split was Chemours about $592 million, DuPont about $400 million, and Corteva about $193 million. In August of last year, they settled every environmental claim the state of New Jersey had against them for $875 million paid out over 25 years. So, it's a lot of numbers. Just to recap here, one of the 4 companies that controls more than half the seeds on Earth wrote a $193 million check because of forever chemicals in American drinking water. Those 4 companies sell you the seed engineered to survive the chemical, right? The chemical that kills weeds. And then they sell you that chemical, the chemical that kills weeds. All right, got it. And at least one of them has been paying for the last round of chemicals this whole time. Just know there's a tangent brewing in my mind. And I keep remembering that almost everything that we eat and that we use is owned by the same 10 companies. Just know there's a tangent in my mind, but I'll save it for another episode because this is already a really long episode and it's already pissing me off. Anyway, let's actually talk about how seedless fruit works, because when I learned this, honestly, it kind of made me feel like a little bit of a scientist. Take a watermelon, which, fun fact, I don't really like watermelon, but that's neither here nor there. Take a watermelon. A normal seeded watermelon is what's called a diploid. Di meaning two. It has 2 sets of chromosomes, 22 total. 2 sets is what most plants and animals have. You're a diploid, I'm a diploid. We've got 1 set from each parent. Now, if you take a diploid watermelon plant and you treat it with a chemical called colchicine, which comes from the autumn crocus and disrupts cell division, you can get cells that end up with double the chromosomes. 4 sets, 44. That's a tetraploid. Then you cross them. Tetraploid plant as the mother, diploid plant as the father. 4 sets plus 2 sets, and each parent contributes half. So the offspring gets 2 sets from mom and 1 from dad. That's 3 sets. Triploid. And 3 is the magic number here. When a plant makes pollen and eggs, the chromosomes have to pair up and split evenly. 2 sets divide into 2, 4 sets divide into 2, 3 sets cannot divide evenly. There's always an odd one out. So the plant makes flowers that look completely normal, just with pollen and eggs inside that don't work. The plant is sterile. It sets fruit. The fruit has no seeds in it. It's just those tiny little soft white things that you might see in seedless watermelon. Those are just seed coats that never fully developed. This was worked out by a Japanese geneticist named Chiara, and he published it in 1951. So seedless watermelon is 75 years old, which is crazy. I thought this was like a new thing. A triploid watermelon plant is sterile. It cannot make seeds. So where does next year's seedless watermelon crop come from? This wasn't quite the gotcha I thought it was going to be when I started. So it comes from doing the cross again. Every single year, somebody has to grow a tetraploid mother line and a diploid father line, cross them, and harvest the triploid seed out of the mother's fruit. And then when a farmer plants those triploid seeds in a field, they have to plant regular seeded diploid watermelons in that same field alongside them, called pollinizers, because the sterile plants still need pollen to trigger the fruit to set. So there is no version of this where seeded watermelons disappear. The seeded plants are load-bearing, meaning you cannot have the seedless one without the seeded one. Which brings me back to that video, because there's definitely something real in there, just maybe not the part of the seeds vanishing. Like, the concern isn't that seeds vanish, it's more that the concern is who's holding them, right? Because those parent lines, the tetraploid mother, the diploid father, the pollinizer varieties, those are proprietary. Those are patented. When you buy a seedless watermelon at the store, the seeded stock that made it exists. It's just not yours, and it was never going to be yours. So it's not just a crazy conspiracy because, well, it's already happening. And that brings me to something known as the seed library. So April 26, 2014, the Joseph T. Simpson Public Library in Mechanicsburg, Pennsylvania, launches a seed library at their local Earth Day festival. Somebody found an old card catalog and they just turned it into seed storage. You check out seed packets like books, you plant them. At the end of the season, you save seeds from what you grew and you bring them back to restock the shelf. It's basically like a little free library just for seeds. So they did their homework. They partnered with the Cumberland County Commission for Women. They got advice from the local Penn State Ag Extension Office. They stocked it with organic heirloom varieties from Seed Savers Exchange, which is a nonprofit that exists specifically to keep old varieties from disappearing. They got 60 members in about 2 months. And then in June, the library got a letter. It was from Johnny Zook, the seed program supervisor at the Pennsylvania Department of Agriculture, and it informed them that they were in violation of the Seed Act of 2004. The state's concern was that donated, unlabeled seed might contain weeds, invasive species, or poisonous plants, and that distributing untested seeds is regulated commerce. To keep doing it the way that they were doing it, the library would have had to put roughly 400 seeds of every single variety through formal germination and purity testing under the standards of the Association of Official Seed Analysis. So for a card catalog full of tomato seeds in a library in Mechanicsburg, the department sent attorneys and a high-ranking official. And here is where it gets interesting for our purposes. The headlines that came out of this thing said things like Feds shut down seed library and Department of Agriculture shuts down cell of potential agri-terrorists. It went viral. People were furious. The library's executive director, Janelle Dar, said that she got huge volumes of calls and emails telling her to fight the state. Two problems with those headlines, though, just to play devil's advocate real quick. One, the feds were not involved at all. This was a state agency enforcing a state law. The Pennsylvania Department of Agriculture is not the USDA. Two, the seed library was not shut down. It still exists, actually. In fact, we have a couple near me, one in Manitou Springs and one in Peyton. What they worked out was that the library could keep distributing labeled seed from licensed distributors and could host seed swap events where gardeners trade their own unlabeled seeds directly with each other. Dar said, "This is not our core mission. If I could have this much attention on library issues, I'd be happy. Support your library." The department's press secretary, Samantha Krebs, said their change is to protect commerce and also protect the library from liabilities. Sure, Sam. Basically, a state agriculture department told a public library that free heirloom seed sharing violated seed regulations and made them stop doing it that way. That's a very real, documented, and honestly strange thing for a government to do about seeds. And I don't think you have to be paranoid to find it a little bit unsettling, right? Okay, so all of that is the background. Let's get back to the present and what's been adding to my spiraling. Ooh. It's the name on everyone's lips, Cyclospora. There's an outbreak happening right now, if you weren't aware. Cyclospora is a parasite. You get it by eating food or drinking water contaminated with feces. Yes, doo-doo hands touch the food and you eat the doo-doo food. It causes watery diarrhea, sometimes explosive, plus loss of appetite, cramping, bloating, nausea, and fatigue. Symptoms usually start about a week after exposure, and without treatment, it can last weeks and it can come and go. There are 3 different numbers circulating and they mean 3 different things, but they're getting kind of mixed up. So number 1, there is a specific multi-state outbreak that the CDC and FDA have traced to shredded iceberg lettuce served at Taco Bell, supplied by Taylor Farms de Mexico. As of the CDC's most recent update, as of recording, that outbreak is at 1,947 confirmed cases across 9 states with at least 98 hospitalizations and no deaths. Illness onset started June 22nd, and 4 states were just added to that count: Illinois, Kansas, Oklahoma, and Pennsylvania. On July 17th, Taylor Farms de Mexico voluntarily recalled all iceberg lettuce sourced from central Mexico. That recall included market-side brand product sold at Walmart. Taco Bell also pulled their lettuce. Number 2, nationally, the CDC says there have been 4,173 lab-confirmed cases between May 1st and July 21st, and they're aware of roughly 7,400 additional reports still under investigation. For comparison, in that same window last year, the national number was 249. 249 last year, 4,000 plus confirmed this year, with 7,000 more pending. That's crazy. Number 3, Michigan, which is the epicenter, reports its own count and reports it faster than the CDC does. As of today, Michigan says 9,253 cases in the state, with 160 residents hospitalized as of last Thursday. Ohio has reported over 2,500. So if you're seeing a headline saying 9,000 cases and another saying 1,900 cases, they're both right. They're just counting different things. The 1,900 is the lettuce outbreak specifically, and Michigan's number is everything in Michigan. And one more thing worth knowing, the FDA is investigating 4 separate Cyclospora outbreaks right now. So this is not just like one single nationwide event. It's multiple things happening at once during peak season. Then on July 22nd, Midwest Poultry Services, which is based in North Manchester, Indiana, announced a voluntary recall of 1,589,577 dozen shell eggs over possible contamination with Salmonella enteritis. That's about 19 million eggs. They were produced at two of the company's Texas farms and distributed between June 6th and July 3rd. Sell-by or Best By dates were between June 20th and August 17th. They went out under brand names including Kroger, Simple Truth, Brookshire's, Country Morning, and Sunups to retail and food service customers in Texas, Oklahoma, Arkansas, Louisiana, New Mexico, and Mississippi. The company says it found the problem itself through its own environmental monitoring and root cause analysis and stopped distributing fresh eggs from those farms. They told Fox Business they'd started diverting eggs to a plant where they'd be pasteurized to kill pathogens. At the time of the recall, the company said it wasn't aware of any specific illnesses linked to its products. Then on July 24th, the FDA announced it's investigating a salmonella outbreak of 98 people across 17 states and said that laboratory, epidemiological, can't say that word, and traceback data determined the recalled Midwest poultry eggs are a likely source of illness in that outbreak. The FDA also said it's investigating whether there are other sources, and the illness onset dates in that outbreak, it's very interesting to me, range from November 21st, 2025 to June 30th, 2026. So November, people start getting sick, and then the recall didn't even happen until last week. And now for this next section, I'm going to be really careful and I'm reading the reported facts directly from the sources because this is in active litigation and I am not in the business of getting sued, especially over strawberries. So earlier this month, a proposed class action lawsuit was filed in California Superior Court against Driscoll's, the world's largest berry distributor. Maybe you have some in your fridge right now. I know we do. It was brought by 6 shoppers across 4 states. The lawsuit alleges violations of false advertising law, unfair competition, and California's Consumer Legal Remedies Act. The core claim is what's called greenwashing. The plaintiffs allege that Driscoll's markets its berries as safe, sustainably grown, and subject to rigorous food safety and quality standards, and charges a premium on that basis, while failing to disclose the presence or use of PFAS-related pesticide compounds. The suit cites lab testing that a consumer advocacy group called Mamavation publicized in May of 2026. According to that report, Mamavation bought 2 containers of Driscoll's strawberries at a grocery store in Southern California, 1 organic and 1 conventional, and sent them to Hereticus Environmental Laboratory in Virginia, which is an EPA-certified lab to be tested for more than 500 pesticides. The report says the conventional strawberries came back with residues of 12 pesticides, roughly 8 of which were identified as PFAS-linked or fluorinated compounds. The organic strawberries came back with no pesticide residues detected. Driscoll's rejects the allegations and says they are without merit. A company spokesperson said that as a family-owned company, food safety, quality, and integrity are fundamental to who they are, and that they maintain food safety and compliance programs designed to support compliance with applicable regulatory requirements. Not that a bunch of people listen to this pod, but I just wanted to make sure that I let you know and remind you that these are allegations in a complaint. They have not been proven. A lawsuit being filed is not a finding fact. It's someone's argument that gets tested in court. Nobody has established that any Driscoll's product made any specific person sick. All I'm telling you is that it was filed and what it says, and I'm telling you what the company has said back. And then you get to decide what you want to do with that information. But you see why it all got me to spiral, right? DuPont, same class of chemicals, same, hey, we tested it and here's what we found versus, hey, these claims are without merit. Now, let me tell you about FoodNet. In the early 1990s, 4 children died in an E. coli outbreak traced to undercooked hamburgers. In response, in 1995, the federal government set up the Foodborne Disease Active Surveillance Network, FoodNet. It's a partnership between the CDC, the FDA, the USDA, and 10 state health departments covering Colorado, Connecticut, Georgia, Maryland, Minnesota, New Mexico, Oregon, Tennessee, and parts of California and New York. What it does is active surveillance, meaning it doesn't wait for the problems to be reported up the chain. It goes looking. For 28 years, FoodNet actively tracked 8 pathogens. On July 1st, 2025, FoodNet cut required tracking from 8 pathogens down to 2. The 2 it kept are Salmonella and Shiga toxin-producing E. coli. The 6 it dropped to optional are Campylobacter, Listeria, Shigella, Vibrio, Yersinia, and Cyclospora. The CDC cited funding, and this came after the Department of Health and Human Services was downsized by about 20,000 employees. That April, the FDA had also suspended a proficiency testing program for milk and other dairy products. 1 year later, we are in the largest Cyclospora year on record. Now, I want to be careful again about causation because this is kind of the part where I start connecting things with red string, okay? Snopes fact-checked the claim that the CDC cut Cyclospora surveillance before this outbreak, and they rated it true. They also said they could not determine whether the cut caused the outbreak, and the government disputes the framing. An HHS spokesperson named Emily Hilliard said FDA investigators were not affected by staffing changes or forced reductions, that the fiscal year 2027 president's budget proposes a $33 million increase for food safety activities, and that the CDC never stopped monitoring Cyclospora illnesses. Health Secretary Robert F. Kennedy Jr. said the FoodNet cuts were for, quote, redundant surveillance. So here's where we're at. Nobody can prove the surveillance cut caused these numbers, but food safety experts are saying something more specific than, hey, this caused it, and I think it's the thing worth discussing. Barbara Kowalczyk, who directs the Institute for Food Safety and Nutrition Security at George Washington University, made the point that the CDC still has passive surveillance systems, but passive means it relies on states to report problems, and there's no requirement for how long they can take to do it. Natasha Bagdasarian, who is Michigan's chief medical executive and is in the middle of this whole thing, said, "We are starting to see the consequences of an underfunded public health system in 2026. Currently, it's Cyclospora." Okay, you're probably thinking, Eliza, you have gone on long enough. What are you even talking about? Why should we care? Well, specifically as a person who buys food, you should care because an outbreak gets stopped when somebody is counting. Somebody notices that 3 people in 2 states have the same weird parasite. They sequence it, they match it, they interview everyone about what they ate, and then they trace it back to a supplier. And that process is the only reason a recall ever happens. When the counting gets slower, everything downstream gets slower. The illness happens, then the diagnosis, then the report, then the match, then the trace back, then the recall. And all the while, the slower it goes, you're eating whatever's about to be recalled the whole time, while unbeknownst to you that you might be eating doo-doo food. Think back to the eggs that I was just talking about. The illness started back in November, and then the recall didn't even happen until this month. The FDA's food center budget this year is about $1.17 billion. That's roughly 17% of the FDA's total program spending of about $7 billion. So the agency that regulates most of what you eat gets a sixth of the budget of the agency it's part of. And I don't know, that's not a conspiracy, that's public knowledge. And in some ways, to me, that's almost worse because it feels like nobody is even that mad about it. That's our food. I don't know. And here's where my spiral went next. And I'll be honest with you, I was starting to hit doom level spiraling at this point. But my worry was, if we can grow meat in a lab, do we still need animals? And if we don't need animals, what happens to them? And this will happen because I started seeing all these different social media posts about lab-grown meat and how it's been approved and it's in restaurants and blah, blah, blah. So I did a little digging, and here's where lab-grown meat actually is. In the summer of 2023, the USDA's Food Safety and Inspection Service authorized the sale of cell-cultivated chicken from 2 California startups, Upside Foods and Good Meat. That was the first federal approval of its kind. The way the regulation works is that the FDA signs off on the safety of the cells and the process, and the USDA handles the actual meat labeling and sale. For a brief period, it was on the menu at 2 restaurants in the US. As of April this year, cell-cultivated meat is not being produced for consumption or sale in the United States at all. Also, 7 states have flat out banned it. Florida went first in May 2024, and Governor DeSantis framed the signing as protecting consumers from, in his words, the global elite's plan to force the world to eat meat grown in a petri dish or bugs. Alabama followed within the same week. Mississippi passed its version unanimously in March 2025 with penalties up to $500 and 3 months in jail. Then Nebraska, Montana, Indiana, and Texas. And it's continuing. South Dakota passed a 5-year prohibition this year. Ohio passed a law in December last year adding labeling requirements and barring schools and universities from purchasing it. So, 7 states have criminalized selling a product that essentially nobody can buy. The companies, they're fighting back. The Institute for Justice, along with Upside Foods and a seafood company called Wild Type, sued Texas and Florida, arguing the bans are, quote, nothing more than unconstitutional economic protectionism. Wild Type's co-founder, Ari Elfenbein, said the ban slams the door on choice when all they're asking is the freedom for people to decide for themselves. But get this, the National Cattlemen's Beef Association, which is the group that you would probably expect to be behind these bans, they've publicly said they're not worried about marketplace competition. Some of its representatives even opposed the bans. Industry estimates put widespread grocery availability at 10 to 15 years out, if it even happens. So the whole they'll replace animals with synthetic meat and make you subscribe version, it doesn't really hold up here. The industry is tiny, legally besieged, and it's not currently selling anything. Plus, the beef lobby isn't scared of it. Here's the thing, though, okay? Just another thing that added to my spiraling. Mass animal death is happening at a scale that, to me, is quite alarming. It's just kind of happening for, like, a more boring reason. I mean, I hate to say boring because, like, it's really sad, but it's not this crazy conspiracy reason, at least not that we know of. So, highly pathogenic avian influenza, H5N1. It was first detected in U.S. commercial poultry in February 2022, and it has not stopped. APHIS, or APHIS, which is the USDA's Animal and Plant Health Inspection Service, has one tool for this. Their stated policy is that the only way to curtail the virus is to depopulate all affected and exposed poultry. So not just the sick birds, every bird on the premises. APHIS's own epidemiological report said that as of September 30th, 2025, the outbreak had hit all 50 states and Puerto Rico, with 1,741 infected premises and over 179 million birds affected. Industry trackers compiling APHIS data reported that commercial poultry losses crossed 200 million birds in March of this year. Egg-laying operations have been hit hardest, roughly 3/4 of the losses, which is why your eggs have cost what they've cost since 2024. And I mean, it's probably not the only reason, but this is like a big reason of why they cost so much. So about 70% of the outbreaks are traced to independent introductions from wild birds. So you get like migrating ducks or geese or whatever, migrating waterfowl, and they land near a barn. That's it. And this is where the real story, in my opinion, is worse than the conspiracy version. So CSIS documented one case. An Illinois family lost their entire 3,000 hen farm to H5N1 in early 2025. And here's the thing about how compensation works. The USDA pays farmers for birds that the USDA kills. It does not pay for birds that died before inspectors arrived. And that's intentional. It's meant to make farmers report things faster. Most of this family's flock was already dead when the USDA got there. They reportedly received about $2,500, which you think, okay, that's not too bad, right? But they had expected about $100,000 in revenue from those chickens' eggs, and they only got $2,500. H5N1 kills nearly 100% of infected chickens within 48 hours. And the first symptom is usually sudden death. So by the time you know, you've already lost the money. I have another quick thing I came across while spiraling, and I think it's quite important. So I'm going to share it with you. You've probably maybe heard that bananas are clones, right? That's true. The banana you eat has no seeds, it can't reproduce, and every single one is propagated from cuttings of the same plant. Genetically, they're all one organism spread across the planet. And we've done this before, but it went badly. And I feel like not a lot of people know this. I was never taught this. So until the 1950s, the banana that we Americans ate was a variety called Gros Michel, aka Big Mike. By all accounts, it was better. It was sweeter, sturdier, more flavor. I love bananas, as they are now. I can't even imagine a better banana. Is it crazy to mourn something you've never had? Also, side note, I've decided it is my mission this summer to find the best banana split. So far, I've already had 4. Banana splits are truly the best. I don't know what it is. Like, I get so happy when I'm eating one that I could cry. They're so good. Anyway, starting in the 1890s in the Americas, plantations started seeing something called fusarium wilt caused by a soil fungus. It's also called Panama disease. And because every plant was a clone, none of them had any resistance the others didn't have. The fungus went through the entire industry. Plantations in Honduras, Costa Rica, and Panama were abandoned, and by the mid-1900s, growing Gros Michel commercially just was no longer viable. The industry survived on luck, and actually, there is an episode of Dark History all about bananas. Check it out. But there was a backup variety called the Cavendish that happened to be resistant to that strain. It was smaller and blander, it bruised easily, so growers decided to rip out the dying Big Mikes and they replanted with Cavendish. And consumers were handed basically a worse banana and told it was a banana, and everyone just kind of went with it. What can you do? Today, the Cavendish is more than 99% of all exported bananas and close to half of all banana production on Earth. And in 1989, in Taiwan, a new strain of bad shit showed up. Tropical Race 4, or TR4. The Cavendish has no resistance to it. Since then, it's moved through Indonesia, Malaysia, and the Philippines, jumped to Northern Australia, then to Oman, Jordan, Lebanon, Israel, Pakistan, India, Vietnam, Laos, Myanmar, and Mozambique. In 2019, it was confirmed in Colombia, the first detection in the Americas. Peru and Venezuela followed. The fungus can survive in soil for over 40 years. You can't spray it out, and once it's in your dirt, the dirt is done. Earlier this year in February, researchers at the University of Queensland reported identifying a natural disease resistance region that could help. Australia has approved a genetically modified TR4 resistant Cavendish called QK4. So that's hopefully good news for our bananas. But the FAO warned earlier this year that TR4 remains a major threat to plantations worldwide and is endangering livelihoods across Southeast Asia. And hundreds of millions of people in tropical countries get a serious share of their daily calories from bananas and plantains. So for them, this isn't just a smoothie problem or a banana split problem. So you're probably wondering, Eliza, this episode is so long. Why did you include this? I included it because nobody planned it. There was no meeting, no patent, no lab, no shadowy group deciding humanity should eat just one clone. It happened because one variety shipped well and stayed yellow long enough, and every individual decision to plant it just kind of made sense, and 40 years later, there was only one kind of banana. Convenience got scaled until it stopped being a choice. Remember, convenience is containment. That's the thing I was worried about, and it already happened in public for boring commercial reasons, and that is what scares me. So, I don't know. I'm going to enjoy every banana split I have because you never know when it'll be your last. And then, so in the middle of all of this thinking and research and spiraling, I read Tender is the Flesh by Agustina Bastarrica. A little bit of quick context here. It's Argentine. It's originally published in Spanish in 2017 as Cadaver Exquisito. You guys, you know me and my pronunciations. I don't know Spanish, but it means exquisite corpse. And it won Argentina's Clarin Novel Prize that year. Sarah Moses translated it to English in 2020, and it just blew up on Book Talk and Goodreads and like everywhere book related. It had been recommended a million times to me. It's a short read. Like, it's a little over 200 pages. The premise is that a virus has made all animal meat poisonous to humans. Governments respond with something called the transition. So all the animals are destroyed. And to fill the gap, it becomes legal to breed, farm, slaughter, and eat human beings who nobody is allowed to call human beings anymore. They're called head or product or special meat. Sometimes they're just referred to as the male or the female. The main character, Marcos, works at one of these special meat processing plants. He deals in numbers, consignments, and processing, blah, blah, blah. Here's kind of the reason that I'm talking about it in this episode and why I waited to do this episode until I finished the book. The book never confirms if the virus was ever real. It's raised more than once that it might have been fabricated, a cover story, a way to reset who controls the food supply and eliminate an inconvenient number of people at the same time, population control. And the book just kind of leaves it there at just that, speculation. It doesn't answer it or make sure that you, the reader, knows. So I was reading this. Well, I was already reading about FoodNet surveillance cuts and 200 million birds being killed and a patent the USDA co-owned on seeds that don't grow. So yeah, that was the catapult of my brain doing some flips and twists and spiraling. Can you blame it? Now, you're saying that you want my actual review. Well, I hated the book, okay? And not because it's badly written. It's not. If it weren't the content, I'd probably have enjoyed this book. It's very controlled. It's precise. It's well written. Some of it obviously may read differently in the original Spanish, but I am not fluent at all. So I read the translation, which I don't know, that could have been from a very different voice for all I know. Also, I didn't hate it because it's graphic, although it is. And I do want to let you know, if you are thinking of even reading this at all, the reviews aren't wrong. It is genuinely a very brutal read. There is butchering and consumption of humans, obviously, but there's also sexual violence and cruelty towards animals in it, cruelty and sexual violence towards children. And if any of that is a hard no for you, this is your warning, warning, warning. Just skip the book, okay? It's been optioned for TV, so maybe there will be a TV version of it, but in general, this is not a just push through it type of book. Like, I'm not recommending it. I was unaware of the cruelty, which I know. How were you not aware if you knew it was about killing and eating people? Listen, I thought that it would dance around things or like paint it differently or something. It doesn't. And like the butchering of the humans isn't even the worst part of it. I would say the sexual violence and the cruelty towards animals, I got a little lightheaded. And obviously, I don't know, just like the book does get deep into the details of everything bad. But here's why I hated it. So, all the bad, horrible stuff aside, this is why I hated it. The entire time I was reading this book, I kept collecting and holding on to these tiny little moments where Marcos does something that suggests that he's still got something human in him, these little flickers. And I held on to every single one of them. I was building a case for him in my head this whole book. Like, okay, he's in the system. He didn't build it. He's the one who still sees it. And yet he remembers life before. He questions things now. He has little moments of seeing head as humans. He loved and he misses animals, all that stuff. But then the ending? Ooh! It pissed me right off. I'm not going to spoil it, but basically, he's no better than any of them. Every flicker I'd been collecting was me doing the work the whole time, not him. I'd been so desperate for someone in this world of this book to be okay and to like have a sense of humanity to them that I invented it basically out of scraps. And I guess maybe that's a spoiler, I don't know, but ooh, I was so mad when I was done reading. However, And I say this through gritted teeth. That's probably the whole point of the book. Rica has said that she's always believed that in our capitalist consumer society, we devour each other. The book is not interested in giving you a good guy. It's interested in showing you that you'll manufacture one rather than accept there isn't one, which is exactly what I did. Like I said, it is a quick read. I hated it, but it has stayed with me, and I think that's kind of what it was meant to do. So if you can handle the worst of the worst in humans and reading about it in great detail, go ahead and give it a try. I recommend just renting it from the library. Don't buy it just in case you can't finish it. Okay. But it is a reminder of what happens when a society loses its grip on treating people like people, and that nobody is exempt from greed, not the guy you were rooting for. And the book added to my spiraling because all I could think of was what the world would look like if only the government or only the wealthy controlled all of our food. And that book gave me some really scary insight. There is a mountain on an island called Svalbard, way up in the Arctic, north of Norway. And inside that mountain is the Svalbard Global Seed Vault. It opened in 2008. It's run by Norway with Norgen and the Crop Trust. It holds about 1.2 million seed samples from almost every country on Earth at minus 18 degrees Celsius in permafrost. It has room for 4.5 million. It's the backup of the backups. All right. Gene banks all over the world send duplicates there in case something happens to the original. People call it the Doomsday Vault. And basically, it was built for a hypothetical. Only the hypothetical showed up within 7 years. There's an organization called ICARDA, the International Center for Agricultural Research in the Dry Areas. Their gene bank was at Tel Hadia, about 30 kilometers south of Aleppo, Syria, and it held one of the most important crop collections on the planet, the diversity of the Fertile Crescent, which is where agriculture started. Wheat, barley, lentil, chickpea, fava bean, forage crops, varieties bred over decades to survive drought and heat, which is exactly what everyone is going to need. So between 2008 and 2014, ICARDA sent duplicates of over 80% of that collection to Svalbard, 116,484 seed samples, just in case. Then the war. The conflict escalated in 2012. Staff left Aleppo, headquarters moved to Beirut, and the gene bank became impossible to operate. The vault at Tel Hadia was physically intact. They just couldn't get seeds in or out. So in September 2015, ICARDA asked for their seeds back. That was the first withdrawal in the vault's history. 128 crates came off the shelves and out of the mountain. A crop trust spokesperson said, "Hey, so we didn't expect a retrieval this early." The seeds went to 2 new facilities, one in Tobruk, Lebanon, and one in Rabat, Morocco, and researchers planted them. They grew them out, multiplied them, and rebuilt the collection. In February 2017, they sent seed back to Svalbard, about 14,000 packets. That was the first time material retrieved from the vault had ever been returned to it. They made 2 more withdrawals in 2017 and 2019, and by August 2019, the entire Aleppo deposit had been recovered. The seeds from 2015 and 2017 germinated well. Since then, more than 42,000 new accessions have gone into the vault, most of them grown from material that came back out of the mountain. 10,000 years of wheat held on a shelf inside a mountain by people who never expected to need it and handed back to the people who did. So, after all this, here's my landing. The seed thing that the guy in the video was scared of, that's real. In a narrower and better documented form than he described. There is a patent. There is a Supreme Court ruling. There are 4 companies. Those are all true. But the ending he's describing, where the last seed disappears and you have to subscribe, that requires nobody anywhere to have saved anything. And something about people, we save things constantly, obsessively. There are seed libraries in probably every county near you. There's Seed Savers Exchange. There's a mountain in the Arctic with 1.2 million samples in it. There are people whose entire job is making sure the old varieties don't vanish. And the reason we know that system works is because somebody already had to use it in an emergency and it held up. And you know what the actual antidote is? It's so stupid and small. Buy seeds. Not because the world is ending, just if you can, buy a packet of tomato seeds for $3 or whatever, grow them in a pot on your balcony, let one go to seed at the end of the season, and keep those in an envelope in a drawer. Find out if your library has a seed library. A lot of them do now, partly because of that fight in Mechanicsburg. Go to a seed swap, buy from a small regional seed company instead of whoever's at the checkout at the big box store, because those small companies are the reason there's still more than 4 options. Again, that's if you can. Remember, options are sometimes a luxury for people. Not everyone has access to options. Basically, just buy seeds. And this connects back to what I've been saying for a while now about physical media, because it's kind of the same argument, just wearing a different hat, a gardening hat. Also, quick little update on that, actually, and it's almost too on the nose. So, GTA 6 comes out November 19th. A lot of people are very, very excited. Pre-orders opened at the end of June, and there is a physical edition. Only guess what the physical edition is? It's just a box on a shelf at a store. There's no disc inside. The box just has a download code in it. So you can buy an object, but that object just contains basically like a permission slip to essentially rent the game, because anything digital can be taken without notice, and that's that. So you never really own it. You're just essentially renting it. And all that is what I've been trying to say. Convenience used to be a tool. A tool is something that removes a real burden, and you pick it up when you need it and you put it down when you don't. There's no money in selling a tool only to the people who need it, right? So every convenience gets sold to every person. And once you've stopped being able to do the thing yourself, the convenience isn't a convenience anymore. It becomes the only door. It becomes containment. And I just want to say, I'm not telling you to grow all your own food. I don't. I certainly do not have a green thumb at all. My strawberries last year produced 1 strawberry, and it was moldy the day after I saw it, and then it just shriveled up and died. I'm still gonna try to grow some things though, and actually, I have some free seeds coming from Nat Geo. They're pollinator seeds. Look it up. I don't know. Ugh, scratch that. I think the campaign might have ended. I don't know. Whatever. Convenience wise, I'm just telling you to maybe notice which things you've handed over and to keep 1 or 2 of them where you can reach them. Keep some seeds in a drawer. Buy a real copy of something you love. Learn one thing you'd otherwise have to pay for permission to do. I'm not saying we got a doomsday prep over here. I'm just saying let's not put everything into someone else's hands, especially a corporation's hands. And that's it. That's the episode. And I know it was a lot. So thank you for hanging with me. This, I'm sure, is probably my longest episode. So congrats for making it through. If you want to yell at me about any of this, or if you've got a theory you want me to look into, or if you've got a seed library in your own town that maybe I should know about, you can come find me online. The show is at indistinct.pod on Instagram, and I'm at Eliza Hollister. Send me your topic suggestions, send me your feedback, send me pictures of your tomatoes, send me your apartment garden tips and tricks, especially to someone who can't even keep air plants alive. I would love some tips and tricks. And if you're enjoying the show, please subscribe, rate, and review wherever you're listening. It helps the show so much, and it's free and it takes 10 seconds. Thank you to all of you who have left comments, reached out, left a review. I cringe at the thought of you listening to me blab, especially for this long, but I'm super grateful that you would endure that for me. This podcast has been such a fun and challenging thing for me and my brain. Plus, I rarely stick to anything I say I'm going to do. I think this is episode 39, and I said I'd stick with it for at least a year, even if no one listens. So yeah, just thank you. It means a lot to me that you're also on this journey with me. You didn't ask and you didn't make a promise, and yet you're here with me, and it just means the world to me. Okay, I'll let you go now. We will chat next week. Love ya. Love you. Bye.